Welcome in to kick off the tip-off with Noah and Gage here, coming at you with some more NFL offseason action. Um, Obviously, offseason is upon us, and opening up on March 12th, I believe it is, Gage, is whenever everything actually hits, but there have been some people put in for trade contention, and obviously trades are going on as of now, and extensions to guys. So a lot of stuff happening in the NFL, and like I said, it's hard to cover things in the free agency market before the draft, and it's hard to cover the draft before you get into free agency. So both things are very touchy per one another. So first thing, Gage, a chief leaves the kingdom. So where do you go with that? Where are you talking with that?
I wake up this morning to Joe Thuney being traded to the Chicago Bears for a 2026 fourth round pick. And instantly I'm like, well, I can't say I saw this one coming, but I knew with Trey Smith, their right guard, that is under that franchise tag, and then also Nick Bolton, pending free agent, who they are going to plan to re-sign, I would imagine. You had to sacrifice somewhere, and it comes at the cost of your all-pro left guard who got kicked out to tackle because it was so bad. Now goes to the NFC to protect Caleb Williams. And not only him, they also went out and traded for Jonah Jackson from the Rams. So Bears making moves. They've now solidified both of their guard spots. I'd imagine Thuney slides into that left guard spot, and then Jonah Jackson. Sorry, I think I said Jonah Williams. Jonah Jackson will play the right guard spot, and immediately now the Bears are, in my opinion, out of contention on using their 10th overall pick in the first round on a Will Campbell or a Kelvin Banks or offensive line, and it kind of frees them up to do whatever they want with that pick as far as defense, or maybe Ashton Genty, something of that nature. But Bears investing some draft capital, man. Same as, we talked about the Commanders spending a 5th round pick to go get Debo to help out Jaden Daniels. They're getting this offensive line right for Caleb Williams, man. And that was kind of the story from last year. So it's good to see them go out, bring in some faces to really help. I mean, Joe Thuney is an elite left guard. I mean, literally top 3, maybe 1. Zach Martin retired for the Cowboys. But, man, offensive line talk isn't pretty, but after watching that Super Bowl, man, holy shit. I mean, it wins and loses you games.
And I think that's the thing. You look at somebody in Caleb Williams who produced, from what I would believe, kind of over what a lot of quarterbacks would do, playing behind the offensive line he did. So I think the front office for the Bears go out and say, look, man, we get this guy protected. Who knows what these numbers will look like next year? Additionally, add Ben Johnson at the head coach with the schemes he's going to do. We all know that Ben Johnson loved having that good offensive line in Detroit. So I think there's a little bit of cloning going on here. Ben Johnson is going to scheme this offense kind of how Detroit was built, with solid offensive line play and being able to run things that take a little bit longer in the pocket, with solidifying, the positions on the offensive line. Like you said, at number 10, what do you do now? Because at the beginning, I'm thinking, man, they have to go offensive line because that was a need for them. So either they watch this past combine and are thinking, man, maybe there isn't an offensive lineman worth taking at that number 10 spot, or they're just looking into things of like, hey, let's go get a veteran, a guy that knows it, that we won't have to teach him that much. This guy can step in and play right now.
And the big thing for the Chiefs was they had to get off of Joe Thuney's cap hit. I believe it was somewhere between 24 to 27 million for this upcoming year, and it just wasn't going to work out with the needs that they have at left tackle and some guys that are going to be leaving. So, yeah, as you said, I mean, it frees up the Bears to do whatever they want with that first round pick. It'll be interesting to see what way they go as far as offensive side or defensive side of the ball for that pick. I imagine it'll be BPA, best player available. But in the Chiefs' case, Noah, they are picking 31, obviously with that, not even heartbreaking loss in the Super Bowl, just absolute ass whooping. So you lose Joe Thuney, right? So where do you go from here? Last year, you invested second-round draft capital into Kingsley Suamata, who was not ready to play left tackle. They tried him a little bit at guard. It was better than what it looked like at tackle. I would imagine and Mitchell Schwartz, a former offensive lineman for the Chiefs, he also said this too, that Kingsley Suamata will probably fill that Joe Thuney role and play left guard because Mike Caliendo does not need to ever see an NFL field again. And so they will be spending money, I have to imagine, in this free agency at left tackle. I said it before, Ronnie Stanley, looking like a free agent from Baltimore. That would be my personal pick. I think he would be a great fit for them. Another one that comes to my mind, veteran Tyron Smith from the Jets. They got to shore up that offensive line. I have a hard time believing that they're going to use that first round pick on a back end tackle. You'd probably be looking at like Josh Connerly from Oregon or Ersley from Minnesota. The talent at that pick just wouldn't compare to some of the guys that'll be there. Yeah. And they have some other gaps to fill as well. So that money that they're freeing up with Joe Thuney more than likely is going to help with the Trey Smith contract, who you absolutely needed to bring back because he's top of the line guard. And then hopefully, it allows them to re-sign Nick Bolton as well, a linebacker for them.
Yeah, and here's the thing to realize. The Chiefs front office, they know what they're doing. So if you're a Chiefs fan, you see Thuney, you don't worry here because they understand what they just let go. But they do realize the way they need to structure the cap because of the hits they just took, even signing Smith back. So they know what they're doing and what they need to fill. Obviously, offensive line, after watching that Super Bowl, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand, like, hey, we have some positions to fill on the offensive line.
So, yeah, I mean, those two teams, not so much the Bears anymore, but Chiefs will be active in the free agent market there for offensive line. And, they'll probably be spending some big money there at left tackle because you got to protect Mahomes. So,
yeah, benefited this is a situation where benefited both teams. Free up some cap for you.
I believe so.
Solidifies a spot on the Bears offensive line that was in question.
Yeah, as a Caleb Williams truther on the flip side of things, I'm happy to see him get a guard like Joe Thuney because he's similar to Mahomes strictly in that Super Bowl game. You can be Superman all you want, but when you don't even have protection to make simple reads, man, there's a problem. So I'm happy to see him in year 2. The growth for him will be insane. I really think he'll benefit from that and the Jonah Jackson. Got to write that down, the Jonah Jackson signing. So as far as today, Noah, a lot of stuff going on. Let's talk some Seattle Seahawks who have just completely clean. They're getting ready to clean house at the wide receiver position. DK Metcalf requested trade today and Tyler Lockett released. So let's start with DK Metcalf. What are your thoughts on that? Requesting a trade once out of Seattle.
I don't blame DK, and I don't really see a problem in the Seahawks pushing him out either. Like, I don't see a problem with him leaving Seattle. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba has showed that he has wide receiver 1 potential, or not going to say wide receiver 1 because he's a little bit smaller than what DK has, or an outside threat, but he has consistently performed he's just got better since the first year to the second year. He's gotten better, so I don't mind it. DK is looking to win. I think DK is ready to be on a team where winning isn't new. Like, he wants to go somewhere that is solidified, that there isn't all these questions. I mean, I think the Seahawks have a question right now in themselves. What are they going to do with Geno? Do they extend Geno? Do they explore the option? They explore the free agency market? What do they do? And I don't think DK likes that, and I think that's why you're seeing him say, okay, let me out of here. Let's go. Let me go somewhere that they can use me and I can compete.
You mentioned Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is more than capable of being that wide receiver 1. And yeah, a little bit undersized, but you think of like Amon-Ra St. Brown, right? Yes, he's their wide receiver 1, but the amount of snaps that he plays in the slot and things of that nature, he puts up X receiver numbers without really playing on the outside. And it's kind of the same for Smith-Njigba, who will be in the slot, but still be their quote unquote number 1 X receiver. And once again, man, he'll put up
he moved up
better numbers than last year.
He moved up fantasy boards. I mean, Jackson Smith-Njigba just moved up. Even with the release of Tyler Lockett, you're looking at him, jumping just because less receivers get the ball to.
So I would have to imagine, just off the top of my head, the way that the receiver market has been recently, Devontae Adams goes for a third, early to mid-30s. Debo, late 20s, early 30s, goes for a fifth to Washington. I would have to imagine, though, that DK's value is roughly a second-round pick. I'm sure Seahawks will be pushing for a first, but I'd have to imagine when it's all said and done, if he is traded, it will be a second-round pick. Do you have a team, Noah, that comes to your mind off the top of your head that would just be a perfect fit for him? And like you mentioned, it has to be a playoff contender, so it really cuts out, obviously, 50 to 70% of the teams in the NFL.
Without using up draft capital, and that's something where, like you said, he's worth a second round pick. Where I think some teams, obviously, that are in that market, contender market, are going to be willing to give up a second round for him. But I kind of go a different way. I think maybe a team like the Packers could really benefit him because they need a wide receiver one. Jordan Love needs some help. I'm not a huge fan of Jordan Love, but he is throwing. I don't think there's been a consistent receiver on that team since he's been the quarterback. You see flashes from all these guys that they have on their squad. Jaden Reed, Romeo Dubs. I mean, you see a lot of potential out of these guys, but no one consistently performs. So what I could see, maybe a swap in something like a Dubs for Metcalf, and obviously give him maybe something a little bit else because the caliber of player is totally different. But I could see him going to a Packers because, for one, I don't think he competes for targets at the Packers. I think Jordan Love will force feed him the ball, and that's a team that's contended in the playoffs the past 2 years. So
I like that, definitely. As far as NFC teams, it would give Jordan Love a consistent receiver. And like you mentioned, he's well known to kind of that Brett Favre mentality, push the ball down the field and kind of sling it. So a receiver like DK would be a great fit for him. Throw it up 50-50. Seems more times than not, DK will make that catch. So the thing to highlight here with Metcalf is he's on the last year of his deal coming up, of his 3-year deal. So a team that does trade for him is similar to the T. Higgins situation there before he got tagged. They are going to have to extend him if they trade for him. So they'll be investing some money into him, which isn't a bad thing as long as you're comfortable with trading some capital and then and putting some money on top of it. That's nothing new. We've saw that before. So a team that comes to my mind, Noah, in the AFC, so opposite conference, the Baltimore Ravens, playoff contender. They just need something to say, we are going to put this over the hump, man. We have got to beat Buffalo. And then when we see the Chiefs again, we got to beat the Chiefs. Because obviously 2 years ago, they lost that game to Kansas City, home playoff game. So here you are, you have Zay Flowers, who's going to be coming off an injury, and then Rashad Bateman, as of right now, is your wide receiver too. So I look at DK Metcalf. Lamar, sneaky enough, has become a really good passer in my eyes. I'm not sure if it's, the addition of Derrick Henry, where teams are having to put a little bit more bodies in the box to stop the run, and they're getting one-on-one coverage and stuff like that. But DK Metcalf in this offense, first off, from a physicality standpoint, would be unbelievable. With the speed of Lamar Jackson and his legs he can use at quarterback, the power running of Derrick Henry, and then you add the speed of Zay Flowers, and then the 50-50 go-get-it X receiver, DK Metcalf, that's a scary offense to try and plan for, Noah.
yeah, I agree. I don't have any problem with the Baltimore Ravens going to try and get this done for DK. I think it definitely does improve them drastically because, like you said, you've had a guy in Zay Flowers who's been solid. I mean, way more than solid this previous year, coming off injury, but just giving Lamar kind of like that deep threat option, somebody that can, kind of AJ Brown-esque in my opinion, in what DK and AJ Brown are able to do at that X position on the outside of the offense. Just being able to say, okay, we will literally fake the handoff to Derrick Henry and go get this thing. I'm going to launch it down the field. You go get it. And that's what DK is good for. So I don't mind the pickup or the addition of DK into the Baltimore offense if they're willing to spend a little bit of capital in extending him. And I don't know. It seems like the Ravens haven't been willing to go get one of those receivers that are going to make them better. After the Deontay Johnson fallout, I don't know what they're willing to do at the receiver position.
Yeah, for sure. They might get some cold feet on trading for another receiver. That whole thing was absolutely crazy to see. But yeah, I'm sure Todd Monken, their offensive coordinator, would love to add DK Metcalf. That would be a really good offense for them. The other receiver, Noah, released, Tyler Lockett. Didn't really have a huge role this past year, but as we know, he's about as steady as it gets when he's on the field. And I think you and I both agree, and probably 99% of Americans who watch football, there's one team and one team only that I think he goes to, and that's the Las Vegas Raiders.
Bring him back, Pete. I mean, I just love the addition for the Raiders. I think it gives them another receiver that is. I mean, they have Myers, they have Bowers. That receiver two position is kind of similar to what the Redskins went through. Um, it's kind of up and down always. You never know what kind of performance you're going to get out of the guys. So I just really like Ty Lockett to solidify the wide receiver two. And even if the Raiders decide to go receiver in the draft, which I don't know if they will, if they decide to go, what better person to learn from than Ty Lockett, a guy who's did it, a guy who understands taking care of his body. This dude literally catches balls, slides down, plays for the next down. Like, I love Ty Lockett. Ty Lockett is a guy who plays football in a way that he's not flashy. He doesn't always ask for the football. He just goes out there and gets it done. And that's what I really enjoy about him. I think it would be perfect for him to reunite with Pete Carroll in
Yeah, and the emergence of Smith and Najigba obviously kind of pushed him naturally down the depth chart there in Seattle to wide receiver 3, which they ran a bunch of 3 wide receiver sets anyway. But you invest first round draft capital in the JSN, and your production is obviously going to take a hit. But
they just target
targets. Raiders' current wide receiver 2, like you said, Trey Tucker, and wide receiver 3, DJ Turner. So they are in desperate need of both wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2. But Jacoby Myers for a year, in terms of where their roster is okay to be the number 1 receiver for them. But a guy like Ty Lockett to play your wide receiver 2 and just bring some steady receiver play into that room would be absolutely huge, especially, Noah, if somehow Shadur falls to them at their draft pick at 6 or 7, I think it's 6, in front of the Jets. So, yeah, I like Ty Lockett here to the Raiders. It just makes a ton of sense. Like you said, Pete Carroll guy, and I'm sure he'd love to get him back in the room.
Another question here. I know kind of going a little bit off topic here, but with the way this roster's going, especially with DK requesting the trade, what do you think Seattle is thinking about Geno right now? Do you think they pull the trigger and move off of him, or?
I think this is some foreshadowing for down the line. Maybe it's next year or something like that, where they will be in the quarterback market here soon. It's hard when you have a mid-caliber quarterback in the NFL to extend and give big money to. Not saying that Daniel Jones was a mid-caliber quarterback. He was, more so in the lower end, but Giants viewed him as a mid quarterback. They paid him money, and it absolutely destroyed their teams. So I think Seattle is kind of seeing this the same way and being like, we can't give this guy the money that he's going to be asking for. So I think, we could be seeing Geno out the door there in Seattle here soon, because and we love Geno, don't get me wrong, but it's easy to replace, mid-caliber quarterbacks in the NFL. You can replace mid with mid, but when you give a guy, of that level, above average quarterback money, like top 15, top 12, it's hard to build and fill out a roster around that contract.
Yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes is the 12th highest paid, or tied for the 12th highest paid quarterback in the NFL right now. So if you're looking and getting into that top 15 caliber, you're starting to think, holy shit, we're paying Geno Smith the same amount we're paying Patrick Mahomes. What are we doing here, folks?
Seahawks will definitely be interesting, and they could be a sneaky team, Noah. Like you mentioned, they have Sam Howell, but come round 3, 4, 5, are they somebody who's looking at a Kyle McCord or trading up for a Jackson Dart in the late second or early third if he was to slip Milrose? So like, I really wouldn't be surprised to see them spend a mid-round pick on a quarterback, and that would tell us a lot that we need to know. But keeping it on the Raiders side of things, Noah, Maxx Crosby got a payday today, one that we wish you and I would have. Gets his extension, 3-year, $106 million, man. He becomes I believe it was the highest paid non-quarterback in the league. So,
yeah,
yes, highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. So
looking at Crosby, something that he said, watched an interview with him, that he was just looking somewhere. He didn't want to go to somewhere like the Chiefs or the Ravens or the Bills, that he wouldn't be a deciding factor in them winning the Super Bowl or them getting to greatness. I watched an interview him saying that he wanted to go somewhere that he was able to play a role in their winning. So it was really interesting to see, do the Raiders believe they have something here in Las Vegas? Like, they went out and paid him they have Crosby on board. Obviously, Crosby loves the Raiders organization. He said it multiple times. What are they seeing here? What is Crosby seeing? Because that makes it interesting to me to see, okay, a player who came out and said, he wants to compete for a championship. He's coming home, and obviously with that type of money, it's hard to say. I mean, could you turn down that money? Probably not. Could I turn down that money? Probably not. But in this situation, it's just really, really interesting to see. I think Maxx Crosby deserves it. He's a needle mover for any team. But I do like seeing him stay in Las Vegas. I don't think the Raiders would be the Raiders without Maxx Crosby.
I've mentioned before a big John Spottek fan who they hired to be their GM. And I think since he's come in, he's made all the right moves. He's brought in Pete Carroll, which brings a little bit of stability to a franchise that just hasn't had that in a while. And he's just making the right moves in terms of, hey, we're giving Maxx Crosby, A, the money he deserves, and B, we are not a team that's just going to let good players walk out of here. So I'm happy to see him get his money, and I'm more happy to see the Las Vegas Raiders have this change in management where when we get good players, and there's some conversation to be had where you could flip him, get your picks, really restart this rebuild. But I mean, like I just said about the Raiders getting Shedeur, are they a dark horse team to maybe get him at 6 if Shedeur slips past, Titans and Giants? Because, he's not going 4 to the Patriots, and he's not going 5 to the Jacksonville Jaguars.
And plenty of quarterbacks in free agency. They are not obviously we're not going to sit here and say the Raiders are a quarterback away, but they're a good quarterback away from 7-8 wins.
Yeah, and that's what we mentioned, right? Pete Carroll was the hire to just be like, hey, for year 1, 8-9 wins would be amazing for that franchise. And then you build upon that. And they are obviously like a great destination to go to. I don't think a lot of people are going to be like, I'm not really feeling that. I don't want to go to Vegas. Like, come on, man. I've been out there. Obviously, the stadium's awesome. City's awesome. I believe a no state income tax. No, I could be wrong about that. So your money's – yeah, I think your money is your money, so that obviously comes into play too. So, yeah, you said it best, right? That maybe they go free agency, maybe it's Darnold. Obviously, Tom Brady has a play in that front office role for finding the quarterback. So maybe it's Darnold or the draft with Shedeur. So, I was just good on Maxx Crosby, man. I respect the loyalty and hope that the Raiders can make a significant jump in terms of where they were this past season with Antonio Pierce.
Yeah, I think that definitely hits home. It's nice to see somebody to stay at an organization, ride it out through the thick and the thin with them. I love to see that for Crosby.
So let's finish things up here with 2 NFC teams who are actually in the same division, though. Let's start with the Philadelphia Eagles, who extended both Saquon Barkley and Zach Bond today. Obviously, just keeping good players locked up. It comes at the expense of Darius Slay, who was released, and James Bradbury, who didn't really play a ton I don't want to say didn't play a ton, but they have DeJean, they have Quinyon Mitchell, so they had some room to let some of these cornerbacks walk out the door. So obviously Saquon, after the year that he just had, was 2,000 yards and all the touchdowns, was getting his money. And then Zach Bond, who we are obviously a big fan of, sideline to sideline linebacker who just makes plays. So obviously they're contenders, and they're keeping guys in the building that they think are going to get them right back to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think it would be foolish for the Eagles to not give these guys money. I mean, we saw what happened with their impacts on the team at the addition of Bond and Saquon. So definitely give these guys their money. And like you said, I think Bradbury and I think Slay have served their purpose kind of there in the Eagles organization, handing the torch to cornerbacks that we're not going to go ahead and say like they're on the same level as what maybe a Slay was, but they've definitely showed in the previous year, they showed that they were able to perform at a high level and they were able to win a Super Bowl. So bringing these guys back, I don't think it should be a shock to anybody. But man, I mean, they're spending some money. This could be into a situation where you're seeing the Eagles 4 years in a row, getting back to the Super Bowl with these additions.
And let's not forget too, they are obviously one of the best teams in drafting. Not only first round, but like the entire draft. They are using all 7 picks or 7 rounds. Excuse me. They probably have some extra 3s, 4s in their draft capital, but they draft extremely well. They develop really well. So when they let guys like Slay and Bradbury out the door, it just seems like in rounds 3, 4, 5 they draft a corner and develop him right into another starting caliber player. So yeah, good on the Eagles for getting Barkley that money. And then the enemy, quote unquote, for the Eagles, a team that thinks that they are 1 move or 2 moves away from actually being on the Eagles level, Noah, the Dallas Cowboys reconstructed Dak's contract and reconstructed CD Lamb. They reconstructed Dak Prescott's deal. It opened up $36.6 million in cap space, and then CD Lamb's created $20 million in cap space. So they have opened up some major money to go out and spend in free agency in a class where Jerry Jones is on record saying that they are going to be aggressive. And I had a funny thing. I was like, this means that in the running back room, you're getting Raheem Morris and, Aaron Jones at running back. But you got to have the money to do it, and now Jerry Jones does. So we'll see how he spends it.
And they already went out and signed a defensive tackle, or extended, I guess I should say.
Extended, yeah.
Tackle.
Osa Odighizuwa.
Yeah, so
right. A really good tackle.
Yep,
their defensive tackle.
So just really interesting to see where they're going. Kind of draws the question: are they going to go try and get Dak a wide receiver 2? Not that I feel like Tolbert's did an awful job at that position, but I do think you need to solidify that receiver 2 spot. Obviously, the running back room you have to address. Are you going to go address that in free agency? Are you going to draft it? So really, there's a lot of questions at the organization level of where are you going to spend your draft picks and where are you going to spend your money? Because depending, I mean, this is pretty much every team, but especially with the Cowboys right now, where you see they go in free agency, it really will tell what's going to happen in the draft for them. If they go get a receiver or they go pick a running back out of free agency, obviously those are 2 positions they're not going to fill in the draft.
My personal take, I think if Genty is on the board at 12 for the Dallas Cowboys, I do not think you take him. I think you use your first-round pick on offensive line or the defensive side of the ball. And before I talk more about the draft, you have to remember, too, with the reconstruction of both CD and Dak, it opens up money to re-sign Micah Parsons, which I think is a key thing to remember here. They had to get money to give him the deal that he's going to want. Obviously, phenomenal edge rusher. Have to keep him in-house. Similar to what we just talked about with the Philadelphia Eagles. Keep good, and Maxx Crosby. Keep good players on your team. That should be focus number 1. Focus 2 is the draft. I don't think you should spend that first-round draft capital on Genty because of how good this running back draft class is. I think if you're going to get one in the draft, wait until round 2 and take Judkins or Caleb Johnson or somebody an early round 2 running back. I think you use that first-round pick, Noah, on a guy, I think, a left tackle, right? Kelvin Banks Jr. from Texas or Mimbu from Memphis or Missouri, who had a really good combine. I think back to when the Dallas Cowboys were good, right? They were constantly drafting offensive line, it felt like, in the first round. Zach Martin. There's another one I'm blanking off the top of my head. They have Tyler Smith right now, who I believe was a first-round pick from Tulsa. So I would love to see them get back in the trenches with that first-round pick or a defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, defensive tackle, I keep on saying sign, but they did extend the last name that I would absolutely slaughter because it's not right in front of my face. They did extend him and give him some more money. So I do like that, but this is also a position where they do need to address the defensive side of the football as well. So spending, I don't know who would be there at 12, but if a guy like Graham would slip to 12, don't think it happens, but if a guy like Graham would slip to 12, right there, that opens it up. I mean, that's a guy that is a game changer in the middle of that defense. So I really do want to see either the Cowboys address the trenches with that early pick. And like you said, the running back room's so deep. I mean, you're going to see teams that don't need running backs go ahead and pull a trigger on a fourth round back because this guy is
it's just that good of a class,
just that good of a draft. So I mean, it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the draft, especially with the Cowboys, because there's a lot of ways to mess it up. And in Jerry Jones fashion, it could very well happen, but there's also a lot of things that could go right for you if you play your cards right.
I did want to fact check myself as well. Tyler Smith was 2022 24th overall pick from Tulsa, so I was right there. And yeah, I like what you said right about the defensive side of the ball too, right? Demarcus Lawrence, their edge left in, he is an unrestricted free agent. I haven't heard much buzz about that, so I would assume that he is going to be walking. So Cowboys potentially in play for edge in the draft too. Michael Williams from Georgia, maybe a Jalen Walker linebacker from Georgia who's also dealing with an injury I saw,
Yeah,
but they could be in the
Pierce,
market
Queen.
for James Pierce. Yeah, there's definitely some good edge prospects in this draft to get the DeMarcus Lawrence replacement, and along with the money that they're going to have in free agency, how much I don't know because of that Parsons extension. You'd have to imagine around the money that they just created. I would say half of it is going to the Parsons deal. So where do they go in free agency? You use the draft. Use the draft to get talent, right? You draft talent and you make it work position wise, but use free agency to fill holes that you need. That's the way that I would go. Who knows what Jerry Jones will do?
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see what happens in that organization. Like I said, there's so many ways to go right about it, and there's so many ways to stay wrong. Let's not act like the Cowboys don't have a pretty solid team. Dak gets injured, and it completely blows up the season. There's not saying that running back play was awful for them this year. I think they got what they paid for. When you have the chance to go sign Derrick Henry and you don't take him. I don't think there was a place where Derrick Henry would have rather been than in Dallas. So just really interesting to see how they performed last offseason and wonder what that affects coming into this offseason with drafting a little bit more money to spend in free agency here. So.
And let's not forget this, because now you're going to be paying for the repercussions of this stupidity from Jerry Jones. They sent a 4th-round pick to the Carolina Panthers for Jonathan Mingo, who I don't know if they plan on him playing wide receiver too, but I don't know. As if that trade wasn't bad enough, Noah, that was a 4th-round pick. They also sent another 4th-round pick to the 49ers for Trey Lance to be a backup quarterback who didn't even play when Dak Prescott got hurt. It was Cooper Rush again. And guess what? He's a free agent. So you wasted 2 4th-round picks on absolutely nothing and now get no return in the middle value, the middle round of this upcoming draft.
Like we always say, these teams that you see, just for Eagles, for example, they hit on those late round draft picks, and that's why they stay above the herd, and they're always ahead these other teams that don't take those picks seriously.
And it's I don't understand it, because you can't sit here and be like, well, Jerry Jones is just an awful, terrible drafter. Like, yes, every GM has their misses, Noah, but like, this is the same guy who took CeeDee Lamb, Micah Parsons. Like, he obviously can see talent when it's right in front of him. But I mean, some of these, I just feel like some of these teams don't understand how important these, round 3 through 7 picks can be, especially if you have really good player development. You just see it all the time. These guys turn into starters on teams, and it allows you flexibility in future years to let guys walk or just kind of make moves based upon, hey, we think this 5th-round offensive guard or this 5th-round edge guy that we got can be a starter next year. We can move off or let this guy walk to open up money for other areas. So we'll see, man. That's really all I got for the Cowboys in this episode.
Just to hit on my last thing here, just to hit on the last thing, I think you said it perfectly there at the end. You're filling in free agency, you're filling holes. In the draft, you're drafting talent. But in those late rounds, you're filling later holes. Like you said, you're waiting for a guy that you need to make a decision. Man, can we let him walk? Oh, we can, because we hit on this 5th-round draft pick last year, so we know we can fill. I think that's the perfect thing. You're filling a later hole with those deep round draft picks. So just really interesting to see. Like I said, this is all we have for the episode today. We'll obviously get into things when free agency kicks off. After free agency kicks off, and we see where some big names land, definitely going to come out and try with a mock draft and see what happens. See what happens there. Between Gage and I drafting back and forth, hopefully on PFF if we can get that done.
Yeah, man, just obviously NFL dump today, a lot of stuff going on, and I'm sure tomorrow will be the same exact way. The league never sleeps, so appreciate you guys watching as always, man, and like you said, like, comment, subscribe, comment, of course, anything that you guys want us to kind of cover or get our, I don't want to say yeah, our perspective. I don't know if people respect that or not yet. So I guess time will tell.
Yes, sir. Like always, like, comment, subscribe. We appreciate you guys watching.